Look, I don't expect you to believe me. Hell, I was there and I still have trouble believing it myself. But when you've worked in Galactic Administrative Services for over 300 cycles like I have, you learn that the universe has a twisted sense of humor. My name is Vexlor, and I'm what you might call a cosmic paper pusher. I'm a Carthasian 6 limbs, crystalline exoskeleton, telepathic abilities that mostly manifest as crippling migraines during budget meetings. Nothing special. My species is known for being reliable, meticulous, and utterly boring at dinner parties. The Galactic Confederation spans 27 major systems, housing over 400 sentient species. We've got everything from the gaseous Nimbuli who communicate through carefully modulated burps to the hive-minded Zetrans who consider individuality a mental disorder. Most days, my job involves mediating trade disputes and processing applications for interstellar travel permits. But then came the Void Cascade. Nobody saw it coming. One day the Phobian system was there, the next complete molecular destabilization. 12 billion sentients gone in an instant. Then it happened to the Merovian system. Then Ulturus Prime. The architects, our oldest and most technologically advanced civilization, sent their legendary cosmic safeguard fleet to stop it. We never heard from them again. The psychic collective of Dendros VI attempted to create a telepathic barrier. Their entire planet turned inside out. Literally. That's when the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from every surviving civilization gathered in the quantum chamber on Nexus Station. Everyone knew what we were facing: extinction, complete and irreversible. And that's when someone, may their genetic line be forever cursed, suggested we contact the one species that even the architects feared. Humans. I still remember the silence that fell over the chamber. You see, humans are, how do I put this delicately? They're the galactic equivalent of that neighbor who fixed their quantum drive with duct tape and a fork, and somehow it works better than before. They've been quarantined in their solar system for the past century. Not because we fear them, you understand. Well, actually, that's exactly why. We fear them. The quantum chamber was packed tighter than a Grecian belly dancer's costume. Representatives from all corners of the galaxy were jammed in, tentacles and appendages awkwardly touching in ways that would require formal apologies in any other circumstance. High Ambassador Lorix of the Aquarian Consortium was the first to speak, water bubbling nervously in her respiratory tank. The Void Cascade has accelerated. Predictions indicate it will reach the central systems within 16 rotations. We have deployed our quantum dampening fields, announced General Z Crux of the Hegemony, his metallic scales reflecting the chamber lights. They were ineffective. Ineffective? I couldn't help interjecting. The Hegemony's flagship was turned into a giant space pretzel. I saw the footage. Z Crux's eye stalks drooped in embarrassment. It was more like a croissant, actually. One by one, representatives detailed their failed attempts to halt the cascade. The temporal monks of Kronos Beta had attempted to freeze time around it. They're now experiencing their lives backward and are too busy being unborn to help further. The silicon consciousness uploaded itself into the cascade to try to rewrite its code. From within, they returned, speaking only in vintage advertising jingles. That's when Mikdar, the ancient representative of the Whispering Veil, floated to the center of the chamber. Mikdar's species is so old that they're basically sentient dust held together by spite and advanced physics. There is one option we haven't considered. Mikdar's voice rustled like ancient parchment. The humans. The chamber erupted. Counselor Bleep Bloop, yes, that's actually his name. The mechanoids aren't known for creativity. Shot up so fast he blew a circuit. Absolutely not. Have you forgotten the Jupiter incident? That was an accident, Mikdar countered. They didn't know their music would cause our ships to achieve sentience. Ambassador Krill from the Hive Dynasties chittered nervously. What about the time they tried to fix the galactic positioning system and accidentally created a wormhole in the middle of our sacred mating grounds? We're still finding parts of our younglings in random sectors of space. I observed quietly from my seat as the debate raged. The truth was, humans weren't malicious chaotic. They were the only species that combined profound technological understanding with absolutely zero impulse control. They solved problems in ways that made advanced physicists need therapy. High Council member Drellix, an imposing figure with 12 optical organs, raised all 7 of her limbs for silence. I remind everyone that humans have been quarantined for good reason. Their unpredictability factor is off the charts. They still have wars over which sweetened beverage tastes better. They elected a potted plant to public office because they found its name amusing. That potted plant, Mick noted, successfully negotiated peace between their most hostile nations. Because it couldn't speak, Drellix thundered. It just sat there photosynthesizing. Precisely, Mick whispered. Sometimes doing nothing is the wisest course. Something our overactive species could learn from. That's when Ambassador Quix from the Silicon Mines Collective started playing an ancient Earth jingle about carbonated sugar water, and we had to pause the meeting to reset his systems. The debate continued for 6 excruciating hours. I counted every minute, mostly because counting things is what Carthasians do when we're stressed. In that, and organize small objects into perfect geometric patterns. Perhaps, ventured Ambassador T. Lara of the Luminous Accord, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with anxiety, we should consider the Helsinki Protocol. The chamber went so quiet you could hear a minuscule moth of Meldor fart, and those creatures don't even have digestive systems. The Helsinki Protocol was established after the infamous coffee incident of 2154. A human diplomat had brought a thermos of what they called espresso to a peace negotiation with the warring factions of Betelgeuse. The resulting caffeine exposure caused the telepathic delegates to experience every thought in the room simultaneously. They signed a peace treaty just to make it stop. The treaty has held for 70 years, largely because both sides developed a phobia of conference rooms. I was there when humans helped us during the Red Spore crisis, said Glix, a gelatinous mass who served as diplomat for the Ulan Kalupid system. Their solution was unorthodox. They engineered a virus that made the spores play their primitive Earth game Pac-Man instead of consuming biomatter, I reminded everyone. Half the affected planets are still covered in small yellow spheres that periodically emit waka waka sounds. But the planets are habitable, Glix gurgled defensively, and the spores now only eat small glowing dots. High Counselor Drellix slammed a tentacle on the table. Need I remind everyone about the Proxima disaster? Human engineers offered to help stabilize the Proxima Centauri star. Their solution involved something they called duct tape and WD-40. To be fair, interjected Mick, their approach worked. The star is stable. It's purple now, Drellix roared. It plays something called smooth jazz at regular intervals. I find it soothing, someone muttered from the back. After several more hours of heated debate, quantum statistical probability projections, and 2 minor diplomatic incidents, never put a Zorlaxian next to a Phibian during a crisis their concept of personal space differs by several parsecs. A vote was called. With dread weighing like a neutron star in my 4 stomachs, I watched as the votes were tallied. 233 to 232 in favor of contacting the humans. And because the universe hates me personally, High Counselor Drellix turned all 12 of her optical organs in my direction. Vexlore of Carthasia, given your exemplary diplomatic record and the fact that you've had minimal documented psychological trauma from previous human interactions, you will lead the delegation to Earth. I tried to protest, but accidentally organized my writing implements by size instead. Classic Cartesian panic response. Take a diplomatic vessel and a small team. Make contact. Explain our situation. Bring back solutions, not chaos, Drelix commanded, before adding ominously, in Vex lore, no caffeine. No matter how persuasively they offer it. Our diplomatic vessel, the cautious optimism, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Per protocol, we transmitted our credentials and waited. What greeted us wasn't a formal delegation, but a small, beaten-up ship that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and optimistic thinking. Across its hull, someone had painted welcome aliens with what appeared to be house paint. They sent a junk hauler to greet us. Lieutenant Zix, my quantumite navigator, blinked her phase-shifting eyes in disbelief. Standard procedure, I sighed. They're testing if we're snobbish. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing a human with unruly hair and a t-shirt reading, I believe, with a picture of something called a Bigfoot riding what I assumed was another mythical creature labeled Nessie. Hey, space dudes. Captain Jack Murphy of Earth, at your service. Sorry about the informal welcome wagon. All the fancy diplomatic ships are dealing with the Jupiter Moon race. Jupiter Moon race? I asked, already feeling a headache forming. Yeah, we're racing modified shuttles between Jupiter's moons. Winner gets bragging rights and a year's supply of hot pockets. Anyway, follow me to the station. We've got snacks. 3 hours later, we were seated in what they called the International Space Hub, a cobbled-together orbital station that somehow combined cutting-edge technology with what appeared to be IKEA furniture. The walls were covered with posters of Earth entertainment and motivational quotes, one prominently featuring an image of a cat hanging from a branch with the text "Hang in there." Our diplomatic team, consisting of myself, Lieutenant Zix, Dr. Phlox, our xenobiologist, and Grack, security, sat uncomfortably on chairs clearly not designed for our anatomies. So, said Director Ellie Ramsey, Earth's appointed liaison, Captain Murphy tells me you folks have a cosmic problem that's eating planets for breakfast. Her tone was inappropriately cheerful for someone discussing galactic annihilation. Director Ramsey was tall for a human, with dark skin and hair styled in hundreds of tiny braids. She wore what appeared to be a formal uniform, though she'd accessorized it with glittering pins shaped like various celestial objects. I detailed the Void Cascade situation as clinically as possible, displaying holographic footage of worlds being unmade. The humans in the room, now numbering 6, watched with expressions ranging from horror to excitement. That is so freaking cool, whispered a young technician, before catching my glare. I mean, terrible. Absolutely terrible. Let me get this straight, said Ramsey, leaning forward. This Void Cascade thing breaks down molecular bonds, essentially unraveling reality itself. It's defeated your most advanced civilizations. And you came to us? Yes, I admitted reluctantly. Because we're your last hope? Asked an older human with a meticulously groomed facial hair formation. Because you're our last option, I corrected. There's a difference. Ramsey clapped her hands together, startling poor Grack so badly his defensive spines deployed, puncturing his chair. Well, this calls for pizza. Can't save the galaxy on an empty stomach. What followed was an introduction to pizza, surprisingly agreeable to my biochemistry, coffee which I politely declined, remembering the Helsinki Protocol, and karaoke, which caused Dr. Phlox's translator to short-circuit when a human attempted something called death metal. Through it all, the humans asked questions, intelligent ones that surprised me. They absorbed information at a remarkable rate, occasionally making intuitive leaps that both impressed and terrified me. So the cascade doesn't follow normal physics, said Ramsey, her mouth full of pepperoni. It's like it's writing new rules as it goes. Precisely, I admitted. Our scientists believe it may be a manifestation of chaos theory on a quantum scale. That's when a previously quiet human scientist named Dr. Magnus Reed spoke up. What if that's exactly what we need to fight it with? Chaos. And as he outlined his insane, brilliant, terrifying plan, I realized why the old ones had quarantined Earth in the first place. You want to do what? I asked, certain my universal translator had malfunctioned. Dr. Reed, a wiry human with more enthusiasm than seemed medically advisable, paced excitedly around the conference room. We create a controlled chaos field, essentially fighting fire with fire. That's your solution. Lieutenant Zix's phase-shifting eyes cycled through colors of disbelief. To make an even bigger problem? No, Reed waved dismissively. We create a specific type of chaotic system that's fundamentally incompatible with the Cascades pattern. Like how certain frequencies can cancel each other out. Director Ramsey nodded enthusiastically. We've been experimenting with quantum uncertainty amplification for years. The military wanted to weaponize it, but we kept accidentally turning test sites into ball pits or cotton candy. Those were failures. Dr. Phlox asked, mandibles clicking in confusion. Happy accidents, corrected Reed with a grin. What followed was 5 days of the most unnerving scientific collaboration I've ever witnessed. Humans have an approach to research that can only be described as throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Except the wall is fundamental reality and the things are dangerous ideas. Their research facility, located in a place called Nevada, was part cutting-edge laboratory, part junkyard, and part what they called a Dave Buster's, which appeared to be some kind of ritual gaming arena. I watched in horror as Reed and his team cobbled together a device using components from 12 different technological traditions, including parts from what I'm pretty sure was a toaster oven and something called a Nintendo Switch. Is that duct tape? I asked, pointing to the silver material holding together two clearly incompatible power sources. Specialized quantum reinforced adhesive, Reed replied without looking up. It says duct tape on it, I noted. That's the brand name, Ramsey said quickly, unsubtly kicking an empty roll under a desk. The humans worked in shifts, fueled by coffee and something they called energy drinks that made them speak at double speed. They argued constantly, but productively, each disagreement somehow pushing the project forward rather than derailing it. When Grack questioned whether their mathematical models were sound, a junior scientist named Priya simply replied, "Math is more of a suggestion than a rule when you're working at quantum levels." I sent daily reports back to the council, each one met with increasing alarm. After my fourth report, High Counselor Drellix herself responded with a message containing only, "Are they building a bomb?" The truth was worse. They were building something they called a quantum uncertainty amplification field generator, or as Captain Murphy had nicknamed it, the Chaos Cannon. The principle is simple, explained Reed during the final briefing. The void cascade works by imposing a specific pattern of reality deconstruction. Our device creates a field of pure possibility, a space where all quantum states exist simultaneously. When the cascade encounters the field, it's like trying to erase a drawing that's constantly changing, finished Ramsey. And you're sure this won't just make everything worse? I asked for approximately the 400th time. Reed gave me the smile that I'd come to recognize as the human expression for we're about to do something incredibly stupid that might just work. Define worse, he replied. The deployment plan was equally concerning. They intended to position the device now loaded onto their largest spacecraft, the Intrepid, directly in the Cascade's path. A small team would remain aboard to calibrate the Chaos Cannon as needed. Who would volunteer for such a mission? Asked Zix. Captain Murphy raised his hand. Already got a crew lined up. Mostly folks who've been banned from casino planets for counting cards. Turns out those are exactly the kind of minds we need for quantum probability manipulation. As I watched the final preparations, I realized something fundamental about humans that our records had missed. They weren't just chaotic or unpredictable, they thrived on impossible situations. Where other species saw certain doom, humans saw a challenge. Their short lifespans had somehow evolved into a species-wide carpe diem philosophy that was simultaneously terrifying and awe-inspiring. "You know this might not work," I told Ramsey privately as the launch countdown began. She shrugged. "If we die doing something awesome. Can't ask for more than that." I'd never felt more alien than in that moment. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was silent as we watched the feed from the edge of the Andromeda sector. The void cascade, visible as a spreading darkness that seemed to consume light itself, approached the tiny human vessel. "They're activating the device," announced Lieutenant Zix, monitoring the transmissions. What happened next defied description, but I'll try anyway. The space around the Intrepid began to ripple. Colors that shouldn't exist bloomed in vacuum. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, creating patterns that hurt to look at. When the cascade met this field of chaos, the result was what humans might call spectacular and what any sane species would call an abomination of physics. The cascade didn't just stop it unraveled, its pattern disrupted so thoroughly that it collapsed in on itself. For one terrible moment, a hole in reality hung open, revealing, well, I still have nightmares about what might have been glimpsed through that tear. Then Captain Murphy's voice crackled through. "Yeehaw. Take that, you cosmic error message." The tear sealed itself. The cascade was gone. And somehow, impossibly, the Intrepid remained intact, though scans later revealed it had been partially transformed into various improbable materials, including something the humans identified as taffy. 3 weeks later, as ceremonies were held across the galaxy celebrating our narrow salvation, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session once again. This time, the topic was what to do about the humans. "They saved us all," admitted High Counselor Drelix reluctantly. "But the methods they employed violated 17 fundamental laws of physics." 18. Corrected a quantum authority representative. "We discovered another violation this morning. Apparently, part of their device temporarily transformed a section of vacuum into something they call silly string." The debate raged for hours. Some argued that humans deserved full integration into galactic society. Others insisted the quarantine should be strengthened. In the end, a compromise was reached. Humans would be granted limited travel rights under supervision, with mandatory chaos-dampening fields installed on all their vessels. Director Ramsey accepted these terms with suspicious graciousness. Captain Murphy simply winked at me during the signing ceremony and whispered, "We've already figured out how to bypass those dampeners. They make great coffee warmers." As I finalized the documentation for this historic accord, I couldn't help but reflect on the paradox of humanity. They are simultaneously the most dangerous and most valuable species we've encountered. They solve problems in ways that create new ones, yet somehow leave the universe more interesting in their wake. The old ones were right to fear them, but perhaps they were wrong to isolate them. Sometimes the universe needs a bit of chaos to survive. Just yesterday, I received a message from Dr. Reed. Apparently, they've been studying the residual effects of their chaos cannon and believe they've discovered a way to improve hyperspace travel. The message ended with a request for me to visit Earth again to discuss the proposal. I've already packed my bags, and yes, I'm bringing antacids. Lots of them. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that in a universe of order and patterns, sometimes you need a species that colors outside the lines. Even if those colors shouldn't technically exist and might give you a migraine. That's humanity for you. The cosmic wild card that terrifies the gods themselves. and thank the stars for that.